So can everybody feel that it's getting to 1 o'clock? Is that why everyone quieted down? Well, it's 1 o'clock. We'll now call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll as I fill out my ballot?
Okay.
That is still open.
You're fine. You don't.
And I apologize for being late on.
Okay, you're
All
good.
right.
Okay, Mayor Williams.
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
I'm here.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Rist.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Well, any announcements by council? I'll start with Councilmember Cook.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Those watching online, I'm going to be very brief. I know we've got some other things upcoming with the manager's last work session here. But I just wanted to say a welcome to our newest downtown business, Boulder Garden, which is a bouldering gym that just opened downtown. Or actually, sorry, their official opening date is going to be tomorrow. And so just a shout out. That's a fun and a nice way to exercise that's going to come to downtown, and I think also hopefully draw a lot of business as well to the surrounding areas. And I'm really excited as a rock climber, very excited to see that in downtown Durham. So I wanted to extend a welcome to Johnny in the Boulder Garden. Happy to have you. And then the other announcement is that I'm going to be, Mr. Mayor, raising something in other matters regarding folks that are sleeping unsheltered, our neighbors that are sleeping unsheltered, and our policy regarding tents for those folks. And so I just wanted to let everyone know that I'll be raising that. And if I could raise it earlier, that would be great as well. Thank you.
Sounds good. Councilmember Baker.
Sure. On Monday, thank you. On Monday, I just express thank you to all of the city workers, everyone who puts in time to make our city a great place. And today is your day, Madam Manager. So many thanks to you. I think it's rare that someone can look back on such a long career and life and have so many positive things to see and look at and think about. And so few enemies from this kind of work. And so I think that you should be very proud of that. It's also rare that someone can leave at a time where they can really leave at a moment in their career that is a high point, and you get to do that as well. Even if someone has a storied career, they don't always get to leave at the right time, and you get to do both. And I think that is such a great thing, and we are so appreciative of that. You're leaving with a legacy and programs and policies that are very tangible and real, that improve the lives of working class people in Durham, the HEART program, and so many other policies and programs that you put in place. There's still so much work to be done, but I hope that you're very proud of that. And today is your day, and we're all so happy to celebrate you today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Our last work session of 2024. Quickly, I just want to say that working with Manager Page has been an utter delight. I have learned so much from her. She has made me a better council member. And I think is in a world right now where service isn't really honored in the way that maybe it used to be. The fact that she dedicated 37 years to the city of Durham is a testament of her character. She has always been tremendously kind to me. About 2 years ago, my mother was very, very ill and was in Chile at the time, and Wanda was one of the first folks that I called because I didn't know if I was going to have to get on a plane in the next 24 hours and was going to miss several meetings. And so I wish you so much joy and freedom in your next chapter. I know that you will always be a phone call away, and Durham is tremendously lucky that we got you as long as we did. So thank you. I will also be departing at 2 p.m. today. Thank you all. Happy holidays.
I'll take your car keys. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I just wanted to share there are a number of things that are going on at this time, but I did want to just put a a pinpoint for my colleagues to just keep an eye on the ARPA dollars going out to our artists through the Arts Council. I was talking to some of the local small business, artists in downtown, and they're concerned that they're gonna be facing hard times in the next few weeks. And so hopefully that'll all get out. And I just want to make sure I put that on your radar. And then also just acknowledging, I want to make sure that we're keeping abreast of what's happening with the Housing Authority. I did get the chance to stop by and see that they were installing in the interim Anthony Snell for the Housing Authority. And I do know that he's been over the development work over there, and I feel very confident he can do the job. But I do want to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity to thank Mr. Scott for his service over the years. And of course, Madam Page, I just wanted to leave you with a little plant to take with you, because I will be growing with you as you depart in your retirement. And so hopefully you'll have that to plant in your yard. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rist.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. A couple of things. First of all, last Tuesday, I had a wonderful evening at Northern High School for the judging competition of the Junior Vegan Chef Challenge. You all may recall that back in, I think, January or February, we did a resolution talking about the value of a plant-based diet. And at that time, the woman who was there to receive that, Dr. Elizabeth Van Voorhees from the VA, said, hey, we should do like and I think maybe you encouraged her, we should do a vegan chef challenge. So that's coming up in January. And so this Junior Vegan Chef Challenge was the first of many things that will be happening in January. We had amazing meals prepared by the students there. There's like curry and chili, and Korean barbecue was really good. You missed that, Mr. Mayor. They wishing they were there. But they're under the able direction of teachers and chefs, Bridget Harper-Reed and Johnny Rutz. I want to thank them for that invitation, for the great work they're doing with their students, and stay tuned for the mayor's vegan challenge in January. The second thing, on a sad note, I wanted to make sure that all Bull City residents are aware of the passing of an absolute legend in the field of coastal geology. Dr. Orrin Pilkey, who's a Durham resident and professor at Duke since 1965, founded the Duke University Program for the Study of Developed Shorelines, and has been called America's most important coastal science communicator. He died this week at the age of 90. He wrote countless books, op-eds, and publications about the risks of building on the edge of the ocean. And no one articulated more powerfully or more consistently that barrier islands are dynamic ecosystems. Actually, in the words of his first and most well-known book, I guess a seminal book, the beaches are moving, right? These are dynamic landscapes. And any attempt that we make to stabilize them with seawalls or with other kind of other coastal armor inevitably leads to beach erosion. In 2008, the NC Coastal Federation gave Dr. Pilkey a Lifetime Achievement Award, praising him as the man who saved our beaches. In his later years, he's a good friend of my mother in Crowsdale. I value the time I spent with Dr. Pilkey there, and I still have a couple autographed copies of his books. So rest in peace, Dr. Orrin Pilkey. There'll never be anyone else like Dr. Pilkey with the work he's done. So I want to recognize him. Finally, a last few words to honor Madam City Manager. So I just want to thank you. You'll always be so special to me as the manager who taught me, who mentored me and educated me as a newbie on the city council. So I want to thank you for that. Your knowledge is voluminous, but it's also that you're incredibly tireless in working for the city of Durham. You're unflappable in the inevitable crises and sort of things that come up. You've been unflappable. So I just want to thank you for all that. I want to leave you with the words of one of my favorite poems by Ralph Waldo Emerson that I think is a fitting tribute to your 37 years of impact and success in the city of Durham. So this is a poem called Success by Ralph Waldo Emerson. To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. Thank you, Madam City Manager. I yield.
Wow, thank you for that. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, colleagues. Good afternoon. Happy holidays, Durham. On this last work session of the year for us, I'll just simply say that I hope all of us will get away from work and enjoy families and loved ones and have some joy during this holiday season, whatever way you're observing, whatever holiday may be front for your family. I hope you'll find some joy. That's all in terms of my remarks. I'll finally say, Madam Manager, I had opportunity to speak benediction over you on Monday night. So today I'll just say, as my final word to you from this day, is something I think all leaders will appreciate. Others may find it a bit confounding, but leaders will understand this compliment in this statement. Madam Manager, you will be personally missed, but operationally, may it be as if you never left. Thank you so much for your service.
Indeedo, absolutely. We are going to miss you. Councilmember Rist, thank you for bringing up the veganary, however we say it, veganary. We're going to celebrate veganism in January. I didn't know she was going to take it so seriously when I said, yeah, we should do it. So with that being said and how serious she is, there's an op-ed coming out in the Indy that's going to talk about the Mayor's Vegan Challenge. And tonight, my wife, Willie, and I are having a vegan holiday community dinner, just bringing folks together. And we are going to celebrate all January. It's not to place shame on anyone who eat meat. I eat meat, but it's really for, it's just to try something fun and healthy and different. And when Zweli and I first tried it, we were like, wow, we just fell in love with it. But we failed to sustain because we were just so busy. But we do try to do it sometimes, and it's just really fun, and you do feel better. You feel great. I miss my oxtails, but I have to give it up for a while, So I hope that you'll join me and the professor and the Durham community in doing this in January. We have a lot going on. We have some things going on today. We're going to continue to celebrate you, Madam Manager. But I just look forward to the holidays that are coming up. I want to say this publicly. I am going to take a break. I am going to take a break. So I won't be as accessible. I know it never turns off, but I just want to say it publicly. I'm going to take a break because it never turns off. Madam Manager, I've had the luxury of seeing you, in your personal capacity, in your formal capacity, and you are the epitome of wisdom. You're the epitome of just constant, just the wealth of knowledge that you hold. You would never be duplicated. You would never be duplicated. But as Mayor Pro Tem stated, the legacy that you leave has been, the Internet of Things for us to reference. And, from Mr. Ferguson and staff that are upcoming, I know that they're well equipped because of the legacy that you are leaving with us. That picture of you holding your golf club is what I keep seeing in my mind, that I hope you will spend most of your days doing. I hope that you'll go to Hillendale Golf Course, because I know if I ever need you, I know where to find you. I have separation anxiety when it comes to you, and I will get over it. Not. But I just really want to thank you and appreciate you. Again, I can never really fully characterize and express when we go in your office or you in mine and we close that door and we enter our meeting with me not really knowing how we're going to make it, how I'm going to make it through a situation. And just the way you lay everything out with such clarity and how you've helped me better understand city government, municipal government, and people, you know, and it's really shaped the way I show up as a leader. The emotional, you know, consistency, you know, the intellectual curiosity, and just understanding the social equilibrium, you know, the equalizer, just knowing what levers to pull, when, and how. And you've been just amazing at that. So I hope that you enjoy every single day and you have the resume to allow you to do whatever you want, literally, and make as much money as you want, including doing absolutely nothing. So you enjoy yourself. And I know we're going to be fine because we've been working with you and we know what you have left us. And we have a great leader that's coming up that all of us support. And Durham is the stability of this community, and we're going to remain that. So, all right. Yeah, I'm ready.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the Durham City Council, my colleagues sitting around this table, my colleagues sitting at this table, as well as all city employees, residents, our community partners, everyone that can hear me today. I am not going to take up a lot of time. I've said a lot of words this week. I've actually learned some things this week. I'm still learning, even though I'm leaving my position as city manager, and that is to be able to accept honor and celebration a little bit better. I have spent a lot of my time as a professional giving it to others, and a lot of time, you know, it's a little difficult for some of us to really accept it. But I've learned it this week, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who's nominated me for something, who's surprised me for something, who fed me this week at luncheons, and just really heaped just total attention to me. And I appreciate it. I will always treasure it and remember it. I have pictures, I have picture books, I have so many things, and this period of my career will always be in the forefront of my memory. So as I sit for my final work session and in these comments, I would like to congratulate William Bowman Ferguson, the incoming city manager, to the seat, to this role. I wish him and his staff, current staff and staff to come, the best of luck, and things are going to be good. So I just want to publicly congratulate you today, and that is all I have for you. I have no agenda related priority items today.
Sounds good. It's been a joy watching Manager Page be surprised all week. We had the chamber holiday event. I mean, just it's been amazing. And just if you probably haven't noticed, I have passed the gavel over to Madam Manager because I would like her to gavel us out at the end of the meeting today. So
I can do that.
all right, we'll do that. All right. So, Madam Manager, have no priority items. Madam Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, I am not going to spoil this party with anything from the city attorney's office. We have no priority items.
Got it. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick board and committee report. The Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority appointment is Tammy E. Hall. And the Racial Equity Commission appointment, the nomination is Shannon M. Jones. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you so much. I'm going to read the consent agenda at this time. I will, considering Councilmember Caballero is sneaking out a little early. I'll probably come back and address something I heard a little earlier. And then we'll get back to the business here. All right, so item number one, and speaking of the chamber holiday party, which was amazing, I also lost my glasses there, so bear with me.
Glasses.
Here we go, here we go. Hide from the camera here. Number one, Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority appointment. Number two, Racial Equity Commission appointment. You writing this down? Okay. Number three, Holistic Empathetic Assistance Response Team HEART Program Performance Audit, November 2024. Number four, Americans with Disability Act, ADA Title II Governance Performance Audit, November 2024.
Hold that. Oh,
Okay. Number five, revisions to deer bow hunting ordinance. Number
Hold
six,
number 5.
number six, contract for property appraisal services. Number seven, parking facility structural maintenance construction contract with Carolina Restoration and Waterproofing Incorporated. Number eight, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Fair Housing Cooperative Agreement Grant Award by fiscal year 2025. Number nine, amendment to U.S. Department of Labor PY 2024-2026. Grant project ordinance number 16403 for federal grant to execute City of Durham Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WOIA, employment training program. Number 10, professional services contract to Schnabel Engineering South PC for dam inspection and maintenance activities. Number 11, Jared Rist, Citizen Matter. Is he here? Oh, it is. All right, and those are all the items. So at this time, which items was it? 3, 4, and 5?
3, 4.
I thought number 6. Did someone put number 6? No, okay. So I'll entertain a motion to, no motion, sorry. That's Monday night. All right. So let me hear our citizen matter, and then I will come back to Councilmember Cook. Yeah, just to the clerk. Okay, citizen matter as well, one legally. All right, and number 10 is a resource. Number 5, the report.
All right, this on?
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, council. So are we good?
Yeah, welcome, you have 3 minutes. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council. My name is Jared Rist. I'm a graduate of Riverside High School and Duke's Nicholas School of the Environment. I'm the son of council member Carl Rist, but I do not speak for council member Rist. These comments are my own. I came earlier this year to the city council on May 9th, and I'm here for a second time now to speak about Durham's fluoridation program and share updates on a major recent federal court ruling. As a reminder, Durham's fluoridation program is completely voluntary and within the city's domain. Durham currently adds fluoride to our drinking water at a level of 0.7 milligrams per liter. This level is the current federal recommended level, and water department staff has confirmed that this level is their target. As discussed at my last visit, the EPA was sued in 2017 for a failure to regulate fluoride appropriately, given concerning evidence that it was causing health effects. On September 24th, 2024, there was a groundbreaking ruling from the federal judge of the Northern District Court of California who ruled that the current 0.7 milligrams per liter recommended level poses an unreasonable risk to human health, citing reduced IQ in children as the health effect. As stated in the ruling, studies have linked IQ decrements of even 1 or 2 points to reduced education attainment, employment status, productivity, and earned wages. That risk, unfortunately, exists for Durham's children today. The takeaway, again, it is now documented in a federal court that 0.7 milligrams per liter of fluoride, which Durham has, is not safe enough for human health, specifically children. So given this ruling, I recommend City Council work with water management staff and suspend this program immediately until the safety implications are better understood. I want to be clear that this ruling has nothing to do with the 2024 presidential election and incoming administration. This is a picture of Judge Edward Chen of the Northern District Court of California. Judge Chen was nominated by Barack Obama and was twice rejected by Republicans in the Senate before being confirmed in 2011. Judge Chen received senior status in 2022 and is a highly respected federal judge. He spent 7 years beginning in 2017 listening to expert witnesses and reviewed the science in this case until finally ruling that fluoride posed an unreasonable risk to human health. The entire justification for this fluoridation program was science-based in the first place, and now the science is against it. So given the new information in this ruling, which I printed out the intro, and it's 80 pages, I printed out 7 for y'all. I encourage you to look through that and see the rest of it online. I urge the city to remove this risk and ensure safety of our drinking water and take the logical step of suspending or ending the fluoridation program until safety standards are further understood.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I actually have a few speakers here for general comments. 75. First is Minister Paul Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Madam City Manager. I'm here today to address, well, first of all, I want to thank Councilmember Cook for bringing up the issue in the November work session as we look at another 17-year-old who lost their life. Where are these guns coming from? So I want to thank Councilmember Cook for putting that on the table. Where are these guns coming from? We are losing too many of our young men, especially in Durham, who are not making it to 18 years old. There has to be a reason for that. So the question is imperative that we ask, where are these guns coming from? Where are these AR-15s and high-powered rifles? How are they getting in the hands of children? We have to ask these questions. It was Dr. Martin Luther King who said in his Riverside speech against the war in Vietnam, and apparently we have a war going on in the streets of Durham. It's not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends that we will remember, at election time especially. At some point, silence becomes betrayal, and we have betrayed the children in Durham. It doesn't have to be an either-or situation. We don't have to choose between bike lanes and trees and saving the squirrels, but let's put as much emphasis on that as we put on these young men who are dying in the streets in Durham that seems like almost a weekly basis. And I'd like to close with again urging you, like I've been doing since May, please look at the T-Hart Amendment and what they're doing in Baltimore, how they're now putting forth that effort because the police department can't actually legally tell you where these guns are coming from. And that's under the T-Hart Amendment, which was, by the way, endorsed, that anti-T-Hart Amendment was endorsed back in 2019 by Vice President Kamala Harris. Just want to go on record saying that. And I just want to put that on the table. But going from Martin Luther King to hip hop, as I usually do, I want to close with the words that I'm feeling sincerely about the attitude towards the young men dying in our streets and the attitude of many in these cities. As he said so profoundly in the classic movie, Boys in the Hood, either they don't know, don't care, or don't show what's going on in the hood. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I actually have an online speaker, Mr. DeWarne Langley. Do we have him in queue? All right, Mr. Langley, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I'd be remiss if I didn't start my remarks by first congratulating our outgoing city manager, Wanda Page, for her exemplary service, professionalism, and commitment to the city of Durham. Thank you so very much for all that you have done in your service to our community, to the city administration, and I hope you enjoy your retirement. The second thing I would like to start with is a moment of silence for the young man who lost his life in Cornwallis on Tuesday night. Two years ago, our police chief, Patrice Andrews, stood before you all and she said, I quote, between the ages of 16 and 24, if you are a young black male and we're just talking about here in Durham, you are either going to be a victim or a suspect. A victim or a suspect, 16 and 24. And I asked this council, since our police chief made these remarks, what have we strategically done to help these young black men? There are many organizations that are doing challenging work in our community. The Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation is one of those organizations. And I have repeatedly come before this council requesting support in the form of financial investment. I can give all of my time, I can give all of my skill, knowledge, and expertise to the boys and young men that I work with, but ultimately it requires resource. And if we are not making the investment to give the guidance, support, and resources that our young people need, they will continue to feel disconnected from their community, lack a sense of purpose, and experience limited opportunities for education and employment despite having a wonderful community college, outstanding universities like North Carolina Central and Duke University right here in our community with over $2 million invested in a semiconductor institute that is coming here. And these are opportunities for young men of color in our community to have meaningful, sustainable, poverty-free lives. But it requires investment. And that's what I'm asking of this council, is to make the investment. We can't keep having moments of silence. We can't keep talking about children diving in bathtubs. We can't keep talking about sympathy for families who are experiencing the loss of these young boys. We can't keep talking about these things in abstract without leveraging the innovation and the ability of Durham to lead. We lead, and we can lead in eliminating the disparities that boys of color face and experience. Let's do that hard work, and I'm willing to work with each of you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, I have Mr. Isaac Woods. Welcome, Mr. Woods. Good to see you. You have 3 minutes.
Mayor. And hopefully she had, did everybody hear me? Congratulations on your tenured city manager, and we wish you a great retirement. Unfortunately, it's not a pleasure, in my opinion, to be here with this matter on this date. As you probably received in your email, and it was uploaded to the system, we're still struggling at Artmore Drive on extending city water, fire hydrant, eco fire protections for all the residents, not just part of Artmore Drive. But the part that really disturbed me is the retaliation part that's kicked up. I own a new house we built at 915 Artmore Drive. 2023, the city's denied a certificate of compliance. Your public works director wrote a statement, which I attached, and said the house wasn't in compliance. There's no neighborhood improvement requirements. To make a long story short, he lied, said it was a wall that wasn't in compliance. There's no wall. I gave you the photos. I appreciate Councilmember Freeman for coming out, looking at the site. She can verify there's no wall. That's just one issue. Then the other part was the neighborhood code enforcement people are scared. They said upper management is telling them to do things outside of the city policy. So if there's a neighborhood improvement, you know, there has to be a notice, have to be a hearing, has to be a signpost in the yard. None of that's happened. Failure to follow city policy. The other thing happening is on my other property, 5223 F Church Road, Public Works flooded my sewer, flushing the fire hydrant 4 days, 1.8 million gallons. I told the guy not to do it. I called the city hall, asked the Public Works guy. I said, look, I'm going out of town, but I do not need that hose there. If you look at your email, there's photos. I had to spend $85,000. $25,000 was for the city fees to extend sewer to 5323 F Church Road because the county condemned the whole property because the septic system wouldn't work. This is still the Public Works Department that's designed to stick for compliance, all because of my outspoken in regards to Ardmore Drive. And the other thing they've started too is they've targeted all the jobs I'm working on. As you see in your letter, Public Works Director, he's renovating, he revoked the permit after we finished the job. He said it was an error. Nobody's that incompetent. We finished the job. But just to sum up, that's just a small token of what has happened. The list is like 10 times more incidents. And this retaliation against me has to stop. You wouldn't allow a police officer to come out there and stop and beat up a citizen and take his car without writing a citation or making an arrest. The same thing here, these are code enforcement officials. Either you write a violation on the house, you don't go out there and tell your officers and your employees to target a person because of their outspoken for inequality for city water and sewer. This has to end. The taxpayers and the citizens of Durham deserve a better council and mayor and expect people to be treated equally. There's a due process violation for you to take my house for a neighborhood improvement and not issue a citation. Hopefully, the new incoming Bo Ferguson will act on this, and I look forward to the mayor and city council having a meeting on this. This has been going on for 2 years. Thank you very much for your time.
See him, please.
Thank you.
Derek. Thank you. Next, I have Regina Mace. And after Regina, it will be Emily Wilkes. So you just come up whenever she's done, okay?
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Good afternoon, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. Madam Page, wishing you well in your retirement. It's never a good thing, really, when I come up to speak to City Council, right? Unfortunately, even though I watch it on YouTube when I'm not present. It is concerning senior residents at the Whitted Building, which is a subsidized residency with an attached Head Start program to the DPS school system. A few weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago, the water was shut off to the whole building. Some calls was made. The water did get restored hours later, about 7 p.m. after being cut off at 10 a.m. in the morning. Again, this is a senior residence living. They have had 2 property managers within the past month, but multiple over the years. And just this past week, the fire department had to cut bolts off the door because there are doors that should be secured that are not. And the VP had the maintenance personnel put chains and bolts on the door to where the fire department had them removed just within this past week. The residents have came together and organized. I know it's very short notice for some, and I understand all what's going on in the city and county with Mr. Scott and others at this present moment, but they will, if anyone can come out tomorrow from the hours of 1 to 3, they are ready to meet, and they do want it to be acknowledged as they don't want to come like a fist and a fighting pistol. They just want some help and support so they can live safely. The maintenance personnel this morning removed homeless coverings and clothes out of the stairwells, and that was part of the reason why the VP requested the bolts to be put on the door. But again, that is totally against fire code. So that is just a tidbit of what these seniors that are just trying to live their glory days and are currently living under. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Doing a little homework on that property, and we'll be looking into that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, our attention.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Wilkes, and I'm the Associate Pastor for Public Witness at Trinity Avenue Presbyterian Church. And I wanted to offer a point of clarification to something that I heard on Monday's City Council meeting. I was here a few weeks ago with my colleague, Grace Wakeman, who runs an emergency assistance program through our congregation, where we're able to support with assistance for rent and utilities. We work closely with Coordinated Entry, or Entry Point, an entity that Mayor Williams lifted up as a part of the long litany of housing services that the city is able to provide funding for. So their role is eviction diversion, diverting people from being launched into the homeless system through one-time assistance. When a client is approved for a place, a room for rent, an apartment, Coordinated Entry would help pay the security deposit and then first and last month's rent. They'd also help with travel diversion. So if someone lost their housing, but they have family in Baltimore, they'd be able to get a bus ticket for them to be with family there instead of homeless in Durham. So Mayor Williams said that the city gave, I believe it was $475,000, but I wanted to clarify that that number was to be used over the course of a 3-year contract between July 2022 and July 2025. And they officially ran out of funds about 8 months early. So back in 2022, rent plus a security deposit would be as low as $675. But with how rapidly rent has been rising, there were times that it was upwards of $3,000. And so when Entry Point got down to its final $3,000, they only used it for buying people tickets to leave Durham, only used it for travel diversion funds. But now they're officially out of funds and will have no more rent assistance or eviction diversion funds or even travel funds until July 2025. And so between the two bonds, the upcoming county revaluation of the property, the city and county both passing budgets that will require property tax increases that will then be passed to renters, I'm really nervous that we're about to see a lot of displacement and an increase of folks entering the homeless system in the coming year. And so our church's rent and utility assistance program has seen a significant uptick in folks needing eviction diversions, but we're only donations based and we're hustling our congregation for funds, but we cannot do this alone. And so we know that rent assistance and eviction diversion are some of the best tools in our tool belt to be able to prevent evictions in the first place, to be able to prevent people from entering the system at all. We know it's a Band-Aid as long as rents continue spiking, but in a crisis, you really need Band-Aids on hand. So whatever we can do to keep folks from entering the homeless system at all for next year is something that I think we need to find emergency funds for. And so if there are any funds to get us through at least July 2025 and beyond, if there's anywhere we can find funding for this, I ask that we try to find a solution. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your contribution to that. And to be clear, I'm referencing the long list of resources we do have. I also, homelessness is very important. It's also amongst a long list of important issues. And we have several resources of funding that is coming into the city. So I just want to allow a binary approach to this conversation. But we're doing what we can, even with, sharing this responsibility with our county colleagues as well as our schools. And yeah, we're doing a lot and we're going to try and do more. And I'm going to protect the integrity of the work that the city is doing. So I appreciate all of the private entities that are, especially what Ms. Wilkes just referenced, the private entities that are doing this good work as well. So I think the request is, if we can do more than we, hopefully we can. I agree with that. But I won't have this conversation without nuance being appreciated. So I want to make sure that we always have room for that. All right. Those are all of the speakers that I have. Okay. Councilmember Cook, I know you wanted to discuss something before Councilmember Caballero left.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as has come up many times, and I'm just speaking as someone who works in this field, but also as a liaison to our Homelessness Services Advisory Committee, and somebody who's just out in the community. There have been a lot of concerns about the city's halting the handing out of tents, waiting for a policy regarding those tents. And as I think it's been made clear in several presentations that we've had before the city, and this data is all available online, we do not have capacity at this time to shelter all of the folks who have sought shelter. So we are well away from being able to shelter all of the folks who have been self-reported as unsheltered at this time. But we do also have quite a long line of people waiting to get into the shelters that we do have. And we know that we are getting to the holiday season, and also that the temperatures are dropping. So what has been asked by the community, and I'm going to echo here today, is that we do allow for the city to hand out tents as we were doing before. I know that there is some work being done towards a policy around that. So is my request that we remove the ban on handing out tents until that policy is in place. And I also would like to see both community development, HART, and other interested city departments to work with haste towards developing such a policy. I would like to see it ideally before the next work session, and more, or just understand why that has not happened as of yet. I do think that that policy has been in the works for a couple of months at this time. And unfortunately, this is just such an emergency right now. When it gets cold outside, we all understand what happens. We open warming shelters when people lose power and that sort of thing. But if you do not have a blockade from the wind, it is extremely, extremely dangerous. So this is something that we have the capacity to do at this time. And again, I know that there's a policy in the works, and I'm not trying to overshadow that. I just would like the ban to be removed up until that policy is developed.
Councilmember Cook brought this to my attention. I said I'd definitely let her bring it up amongst us. They just saw, and I shared with Councilmember Cook some of my, obviously we want to make sure people are sheltered. In addition to this topic, I would invite our churches. I know in my office has been working with several churches through the Activate Durham initiative and Red Cross to have more doors opened, so that we have some churches that are, as Ms. Wilkes just stated a few minutes ago, that are doing a lot of amazing work. But the city itself does not have the capacity right now, but we have a lot of folks in the community. Some people from the HART team, I believe, was providing tents as a triage response. The city itself as a whole does not just give out tents, but there were some folks that were actually trying to do what they could in the moment. So in the same vein, I want to make sure that we are inviting, especially our clergy community to really expand in this space as well. And that it will be greatly supported by our White Flag initiative that the city officially has as a response. So I don't foresee us putting a barrier in the place of the community work that's already been done. I definitely support that, Councilmember Cooks, I've told you so. But I want to make sure that I, speak publicly about our clergy community expanding themselves as a resource as well. Just wanted to say that while you were here. I know you're doing the housing initiative, so. Yeah.
Yeah. So is the idea that we would do like as a stopgap until a policy comes forward? So just go ahead and allow them?
Yeah, that was exactly my request.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, let's do that.
Mr. Chadwell, would you please approach and talk about the status of the encampment policy, the policy draft.
And while he's coming up, I also want to make sure that we have an encampment policy. We're not trying to establish encampments across the entire city. We're just trying to my understanding, address an immediate need amongst a few individuals. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Keith Chadwell, City Manager's Office. It is true that a fairly comprehensive policy associated with encampments that would involve something associated with tents has been drafted, and we've completed a process of internal review of several stakeholding departments to try to come to that point. We have not yet, to the point of urgency, scheduled a follow-up meeting so that there can be an internal collaboration in that space. This is not to represent that processes and unintended outcomes are more important than the urgency that's being stated. However, there are many solutions that have come our way that can be put into place with relative ease as our processes go sometimes in government. However, through resources, through a lot of the study and research and the kinds of things we've done to take a look at the efficacy of myriad of these responses, the simplicity that's implied by some of the urgent matters wind up being a resource challenge not yet defined. So we do want to find the sweet spot that addresses the urgency and some of the more complex items that certain decisions we're making that come with it. This is not a statement for or against tents. However, when the tents are issued in great volumes and all those kinds of things, as it relates to certain kinds of things associated with encampments and the like, when they are left where they are placed, we have a resource issue with respect to how do we resolve the existence of the tent when the tents are absented. I don't mean for that to be a statement, again, counter to the issuance of it when the urgency is nearly upon us, but we do think it's worth an effort to try and manage certain outcomes of the kinds of things that we're applying and giving the dearth of resources that unfortunately we do have. We think there's some things we can respond to in that space. And relative to the urgency, we certainly plan to make it much more urgency to finish the deliberative processes that we need to do to bring forth the policy that is quite imminent. The drafting itself is done. And we've gotten the input that we've asked. So I will be working with the Community Development Department to make sure we advance that cause just as rapidly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, TCM Chadwell. Yeah, I support my colleague, Councilmember Cook. This is not a new issue. We've been hearing about this on council for probably a couple months at least. And I understand this is a complicated matter with tents, and there's no simple solution. But I do think, as I said at one of our council meetings right after the November election, I think part of our challenge in communities like Durham is to make, in this new context, is to make government work better for our citizens. And so we're hair on fire in terms of folks who are having challenges with homelessness and experiencing homelessness. And so I think allowing tents until we get that policy in place is something I would support because it's such a critical need. And I think it shouldn't take so long to get a policy written. So I feel like we need to push the envelope here and really do everything we can to address what really is an issue that's kind of hair on fire. Thank you.
Real quick, I'm coming to you, Joel. When we say community, who do we have individuals that we can identify that we've had conversations with, and I'm just to my colleagues, to staff, if we identify, let's say, 50 more people, is there a resource we can direct them to right now that they would be addressed?
Relative to tents, or
if I went outside and grabbed 50 people right now that was experiencing homelessness, where could I take them right now?
Well, there's a dearth of resources for sheltering. Tents is really an iteration of sheltering in its realistic sense. And at the moment, I understand that once upon a time, tents were being issued. I have no knowledge of the resource that we use to even to get them. I don't know how we got them. We got them and we got them out. So I don't stand ready to understand how we replicate that
Gotcha.
until we're pressed to consider it in different ways. I don't know what budgetary resource was used to acquire them.
And well, let me go here first, then I'll come over. You had his hand? Okay, go ahead. Because you responded to me, right?
I didn't realize.
Thank you, colleagues. So I was the HSAC representative for years. And let me first say, I'm glad that Councilmember Cook is our HSAC representative. I know the work she does in her regular life outside of City Hall and the passion she brings. We'll make sure that we focus on the right questions and the appropriate level of humanity will be maintained. So I'm glad that she's representing us at HSAC. There are challenges that our homeless population face under, and this is a terrible framing, but regular circumstances. When we cross the threshold of a white night, when the temperature drops, you don't need to be outside, period. And I know one of the conversations we had, things that came up with the tents were their structures. Their structures, and there were some indemnity issues we talked about because of if a fire started in a tent, will it give us permission to kind of take our foot off the gas and doing the things that we need to do, which is rapid rehousing, more resources for shelters, and would it be encouraging or even creating outcomes that we did not want to happen with tents? When you cross a certain temperature, you don't need to be outside in a tent. We need to have emergency shelters. We need to have emergency contingencies to bring everybody inside. Now, there are some folk, and those of us that have done the point and count, who do not want to go. You get into issues of forcing people, and where, the Durham Police Department, and I want to be clear, the Durham Police Department does not go and bust up encampments. I remember when we had open table ministry visiting encampment sites. That's not our policy. But so I understand the inclination to want to, while this policy is being reviewed, do a stopgap measure. I don't know how much longer it is in the policy to come forward, but insofar as tents are structures, they're meant to be occupied. All of the life things that come with occupancy attend those tents. And we've seen some issues. So we don't, as a city, we don't want to cause more problems than we're fixing, one. And two, if we give you a tent, I don't want that to be, to send the message that on a night that it's below freezing, well, we gave you a tent, you need to use your tent to be outside. No, you don't need to be outside. So tents are good for a certain situation, certain, vicissitudes of being outside. But if we're concerned about the weather dropping, the last thing we want are people in tents when it's 20 degrees outside. We need to be working on our resources to have emergency shelters and bring them in. So I'm in agreement with, doing what we can do. But if the problem we're trying to fix is particularly cold weather, then I don't think a tent is the answer. We need to be doubling down on rapid rehousing, doubling down on emergency shelter, doubling down on getting folk indoors, because it's just dangerous. There's no heating or plumbing or air conditioning in those tents. And I don't want to send the message that this is our response for inclement weather, whatever that's worth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments. Just really quickly, I think what would be helpful is I don't think anyone's suggesting that folks should go out or stay out in cold weather. We have a white flag night shelter. Open Table Ministries holding that at Yates Baptist Church. I think the issue right now is that our wait lists are so long that we're in a critical crisis moment. And so my suggestion is, until we get a policy back, if we could do for the next 30 days, suspend whatever. I'm not sure what paused the tent giving. Like, I don't know what happened there. I just know it paused. And so if we could unpause that for the next 30 days. There is a group of individuals, based on the conversation that was had at Joint City County last week, that are meeting, that does include city staff and county staff, specifically to put forward some kind of mid-budget crisis solution for some of the issues that we are seeing. It's not long-term. And so until that comes forward and we know what those asks are going to be, I think it could be helpful. At this point, what happens if you are unsheltered in our community and you can't get into the shelter? It's not freezing every night, but it's wet in the winter right now. It's not just about temperatures, it's just about how miserable people are out there. And we aren't doing our responsibility. We aren't meeting where people need to be because we don't have shelter beds for them. Like that's been said over and over and over again. If it is above 35, where it's 42 and it's raining and you can't go to the shelter, regardless of even if you want to go to the shelter, there's really not very many places for you to go. And until we can fix that, I do think we need to be able to offer people some comfort out there. So that's where I'm at. And I understand that we don't want to be in that space forever, but for the next 30, whatever we decide on timing, and maybe if we can put some real time on it, like we've got to do something in the next 30 days. There has to be something that comes back from staff in the next 30 days, because we can't go through the winter right now with the wait lists that we have and expect people to just sit out in the rain and to be miserable. Thank you.
Madam Manager, I'll come to you in a second.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak very briefly. I'm going to enter some comments that hopefully are a little bit clarifying regarding the communication that has occurred today. The encampment policy that our community engages is a HSAC policy. It is not a City of Durham government policy. It is not a County of Durham government policy. It is a policy of the HSAC, the Homeless Services Advisory Committee. And that committee encompasses 35, 40 providers of services to the people in our community that need multiple services. They may need a tent, but they need many other housing-related, shelter-related services. So whenever there is a policy that has been generated by the community and the providers that provide services in that community, there is a certain amount of engagement that does need to take place as that complete policy is being updated, and it does need to be updated. It was a policy that came before my tenure as city manager. There were providers in the system that are in the system now that were not there when the policy was actually created. As we talk here about someone receiving a tent, that is, as Keith has mentioned, that is a component of shelter for people who don't have shelter, but it is a component. It is not the complete policy, policy provisions that help us manage any component of that policy, whether it is, right-of-way management or other things that safety, other things that come into play when you have people who are not sheltered or who are unable to be sheltered. So there is a date that the committee is going to bring back another policy for the community to consider. It is not a policy that has to be approved by the city council or approved by the county commission. It is an HSAC policy, but it is hopefully a policy that our community has rallied around and agrees is an appropriate approach to the problem that we really have. So I said a lot of words, but I really wanted it to show that when we say staff, we do administer we do administration for the homeless services continuum of care here in Durham, but it is not solely the city who is involved in making these decisions. As Keith has said, I am not 100% of where the tents that were being presented, where they came from, who provided them as donations. But I'm certain that there's some staff members that know that. But I don't want too much emphasis to be on the city giving out tents, because this is a system, and I'm certain that, you know, we cannot control whether or not people provide tents to residents, just like we can't control when people give food or other provisions to people. So I did want to kind of bring that point to the table. It's sort of a side point, but I thought it is important for us to do that. But more importantly, you do need to know, as the elected body, the county needs to know who provides resources, significant resources into the system when there's changes or major changes that are going to be adopted by the Homeless Services Advisory Committee as a policy. So thank you for allowing me to make those statements.
Yeah. Councilmember Baker.
I think a lot's been said, so I don't want to add too much more because I agree with a lot of my colleagues, including Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I think, who's emphasizing the long-term needs of our community. I do want to speak in favor of my colleague Chelsea Cook, who sits on HSAC, and her request. So I support that request. I also think under the incoming federal administration, this is going to be a growing problem for our community, and there's going to be this continued need to coordinate deeply with the county in coming up with comprehensive solutions. So for now, as we go into this winter break, it's not a proud moment in society to talk about the need for tents, but it sounds like something that is necessary at this moment.
So the request is to allow what was happening to continue happening, whatever that was.
That's correct. Yeah, just a lift on any ban of handing out tents from any departments that are requested until we get a policy on the books. And then also my secondary request was just that we work with some urgency, but I understand what the manager's saying, and that it's a in-depth community conversation, and so it might be longer. But I just don't want there to be a ban on that potential shelter while we are in the process of developing it. And I understand what's been said, and of course I don't think we want to encourage that as and there are so many conversations, and I want to say outwardly that I am part of many of those conversations, not all of them. And I know a lot of my colleagues are working on this too, and I understand that it takes a long time. And I do not think that anyone's goal on this council is to have people living in tents. Mary said it the other night. We don't want that in our city, but the truth of the matter is that white flag only kicks in when it's under 32 degrees or 37 degrees with precipitation. And it's extremely, extremely difficult and dangerous to be unsheltered even in temperatures that are above that. So that's my request.
So is there a ban? I wasn't familiar with a ban. But go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. The city of Durham does not have a ban on giving out tents. And I think the manager rightly, this might be a better conversation for HSAC. But I do want to, in the spirit of this conversation, the city of Durham hasn't banned tents. But if we're just talking 30 days, we own a lot of real estate. I mean, if we want to go bold, why don't we ask General Services to identify real estate where folk can sleep? Or let's ask our friends at DPS to open the school gymnasiums at night for the next 30 days. And whatever the challenges are, whatever arguments we come up with, remember, there are equal arguments for people in tents as well. So let us not now start exercising the challenges and the indemnity issues. City Hall is empty in the evenings. I mean, if we want to go hard, we own a lot of real estate. So I just put that out there. And if it's just 30 days, that's not a long time, right? We can get our friends at DPS to use schools for 30 days, or we got empty buildings where we park trucks and offices as a city. Maybe we should look at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead. Mr. Ferguson.
Good afternoon, Bo Ferguson, Deputy City Manager for Public Safety. So I just had some information that I think has been questioned at the dais, and I wanted to just make sure all the council members had it. My understanding of the background of this is that the community response teams, as part of the HART program, did acquire with city funding, with their departmental budget, some tents that they were handing out when they found unhoused neighbors who did not have shelter and either requested or seemed as though they would benefit from the shelter. I don't think it was a pervasive program, but it was something that was happening, and it was not something that was explicitly budgeted for by council, discussed with council. The city manager's office was not aware of it. That does not mean that they required our permission to do it, but I think it became something that was of interest and concern among members of HSAC. But the recommendation came forward from the continuum of care that it be paused because I think there were some policy concerns amongst HSAC that it may complicate the system that HSAC is attempting to manage for the city and that the different partners participate in. Those are the partners that all have, I believe, the same goal of serving this population. Councilmember Cook, I was on the HSAC meeting yesterday, and this was discussed, and I did not hear HSAC come forward with a specific recommendation. And so I just wanted to represent that HSAC has had a conversation about this. Right now, the prohibition that has been given to the HART team to not distribute tents, it was in response to that direction that came out of HSAC in the first place. It was made in the manager's office. It was a conversation that we had and shared with HART. HART has complied with that. And I wanted to share that HSAC did have a conversation about the distribution of tents. It was the conversation I heard yesterday, and please correct me if I misrepresented it, was that staff would be returning to HSAC with a final proposal around tents, and that HSAC would make a decision and a recommendation at that point. That is not binding on the council at this point, but I wanted you to have that information.
So just to clarify, so what I'm hearing is that HSAC is responsible for creating the policy. Happy holidays. HSAC is responsible for creating the policy for encampments in Durham. Is that correct? And that Deputy City Manager Ferguson. So, but as you just described, HSAC is waiting for staff to provide input to HSAC regarding that policy. So, did I get that correct?
I do not want to speak for Colin Davis, who's the Homeless Services Manager. He's been more intimately involved in that conversation. My takeaway from the board meeting yesterday is that HSAC's policy committee would be making a recommendation, and I don't want to speak to whether or not they are waiting on the city or whether or not they have the information they need. All I can verify for certain is that the decision has not been made yet. There has not been an opinion rendered by the policy committee about how they feel about the distribution.
And so this, in theory, then this policy committee within HSAC would recommend to the full HSAC. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then HSAC would make the decision.
Yes.
So I guess my only question is, so as the HSAC's rep and other folks in HSAC, can we get some clarity on when HSAC, we need to set a target, right? When will HSAC make a decision on this? So I appreciate your comments. Again, the point is, can we get some clarity on when HSAC will make a decision on this?
Madam Manager.
So often, when these processes are, they involve a lot of parties, and sometimes the city, the administrative staff that provide support to the HSAC, which is, those are volunteers, those are people who work, in help in their committees in order to advance causes in homelessness. The folks who are paid to work in the homeless and manage the continuum of care, they are City of Durham employees. They work in the Community Development Department, and there's a Homeless Services Manager. So often, some of the drafting and some of the research and some of the data that is needed in order for the policy to, have all of the parts and pieces to it, it does involve heavily the city, or it could involve the county, and that's how it overlaps. For example, in the encampment policy, there are responsibilities in that policy that may be responsibilities of the Durham Police Department or of the Fire Department or of the General Services Department or a right-of-way management folks. So, you know, when you talk about, you know, the HSAC sort of in its own role completing a policy, it cannot be done without having the collaboration of the other parties that have to administer the policy. And they have been administering, you know, a version of it for many, many years. So that's why it takes a lot of voices, but it still needs to be updated and finished. And this, tent or are tents permitted and where they're permitted and who purchases them and who hands them out, all of that, that's the implementation of the policy so that it can be, it can be orderly, if you will. So thank you.
So I'm going to say this. Based on what I'm hearing, there are a lot of folks that are playing a role in this situation. We have an entire continuum of care. I believe you all as staff have the urgency that we need to address this right now. From HSAC to the county to all of the other parties that are involved. Colleagues, I am going to request that we allow staff to do what they need to do with urgency to address this. But I don't want to have this conversation in isolation. Because that for me, even there's a lot more information. I don't know how many people we're talking about. Community is a broad term. And also we have, I don't want to get into the point of duplication. And I heard the word budget a few minutes ago as well. So I don't want to start getting into new policy making while there's policy making already being drafted and putting dollars behind it without definitive information. So I'm a little concerned about that. I'm okay with supporting us, asking staff to bring us back some information within a certain time frame. I'm a little uncomfortable with starting to take action right now when there's so many parts that are contributing that aren't here right now in this conversation. And when the homeless portfolio is also in the county, but we have community development as well, and all of our other partners. So I'm going to request that our staff, get on this, but I'm uncomfortable with us moving forward right now on anything. Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I would like to say that I know that some timeframes came up in the conversation, but my initial ask was twofold. It was to lift the ban on handing out tents for the city departments and then direct everyone to act with urgency. And I specifically did not put a time frame on it because I have been part of those conversations and I know that they are ongoing. I do want to clarify that the tent issue was brought up as a public comment in HSAC. There wasn't, in my memory, a full conversation about that. But I do know that directive, as Deputy City Manager just stated, did come from the city. And so that is the directive that I am concerned about. So those are my two asks, that just while we're waiting for this policy to be developed, that we remove that directive and allow sort of as it was happening before, and I understand that it was like within a limited context that those tents were handed out. But if somebody comes up and needs it in an emergency situation, asks for it, or if a community care worker sees that is a need, that they be allowed to hand out those resources. And then we just get with urgency the policy. I think that's been made very clear that, and I think it's urgent for all of the groups that are also working on that policy as well.
Okay. And I believe staff, you all hear what we're saying. I don't think we need to take any formal action or anything. Did you have your hand up?
Process question.
Yeah.
Yeah, per Deputy Manager Designate Ferguson's comments, it sounds like HSAC talked about this, and it was an HSAC request that the city was responding to. I want to be careful. I don't want to exercise a de facto veto over HSAC if the process was HSAC expressed some concern, and if it emanated from a public comment, HSAC expressed some concern, and then our management directed the HEART team. We have jurisdiction over the HEART team, but this conversation is kind of morphed because if we're talking about the wait list of unsheltered people, The HEART team situationally passing out tents as they come across scenarios is not addressing that wait list. That is not an answer to or response to the issue of homelessness writ large in the city. I think it's a great thing that our HEART team has, the resources and the wherewithal to do that situationally as they're dispatched. But that is not by no means a macro response, one. And two, if HSAC asked us to hold off on that in their setting, in their formal setting where all of the parties were present, we have a representative to HSAC, which suggests that we are, we believe in the system that they have. We are a part of that fabric. We bring our ball to the game and our jacks to the game, and we make decisions collaboratively with the rest of our partners. If HSAC has spoken, then I'm not sure, what message we're sending. Is it a veto? No, we're going to do it anyway. And I see you approaching the.
I wanted to clarify that I do not believe HSAC formally requested the tent process to stop. Members of HSAC who had concerns about the policy expressed those current concerns to staff, and staff made the recommendation to stop the policy until they could get more direction from HSAC. So I wanted to clarify that I don't believe HSAC took formal action to request that the tent distribution stopped. I think given the fact that there is a certain amount of policy presumed in handing out tents and that it was not something that HSAC had vetted, that we thought it was reasonable based on the fact that there were concerns in the community of homeless service providers that it be paused until clarification could be sought. So I just wanted to clarify, I don't think HSAC took formal vote to say that they wanted the city to stop doing this, but that members of HSAC who are very engaged in providing these services had concerns about the implications of the policy.
Right. And that furthers my point, but you found those concerns compelling enough to actually, absent an HSAC official vote, you found those concerns compelling enough to take action.
The recommendation of the homeless services manager was to stop that action, and that was reviewed in the city manager's office and concurred.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Let's, I believe staff has heard us. Go ahead.
I just wanted to just be clear, if Manager, Deputy Manager Ferguson could be clear, would there be a negative implication for a staff person on the HEART team to pass out a tent today? So if they felt like it was necessary as a care worker,
But they have been
care worker we established, if they felt like they should pass out a tent, would they be dinged or fired, or would there be a negative repercussion for them at this very moment?
They are under direction not to distribute tents.
And that would be the issue, in that the people in the community who need the tents, or the people who are on the ground who are saying that people need the tents, have figured out a way to provide the tents. And we're saying that HSAC, appointed members on a board who are coming up with a policy, should prevent that from happening, is problematic. And so I do want to be clear, like, the reason we have the HEART team in place is to be able to respond as necessary. And if their response is being blocked administratively because of, like, it just feels like we're running in a circle. There's not going to be a policy in the next week or two. There's not going to be a policy in the next month. If any member of the HEART team felt like they should provide someone a tent, I'm very clear that those are well-trained people who understand what is going on in our community. They understand the needs of the people in our community, and especially people who are unhoused and unsheltered as of this point. They should be allowed to provide the tent. And that's just the baseline of it. On the other side of it, as I heard Councilmember Cook state, this was a point that was raised by a public member, and a few members of HSAC having a concern around it does not mean you should ban the workers from providing it. I think there should be more conversation. And so before the ban even went into effect, there should have been conversation, whether it was with HSAC or with council or whomever, but I don't think that it's appropriate to tell our HEART team staff not to pass out tents. That's just.
So I think there are a lot of repercussions. There are a lot of repercussions that can come from action either way. We could end up creating a tent city in the middle of downtown. We could duplicate our continuum of care services with tents. We could take advantage of, as Mayor Pro Tem stated, existing real estate or infrastructures with community partners. It appears that we have a system in place that can respond to this. And it also appears that we are getting really close to taking some formal action that's in place of almost what's already happening. So I am going to ask that we provide staff the ability to address this how they best see fit. For me, do we know how many people? Because for me personally, it sounds like we are speaking in very broad terms. Do we know how many people? Do we know who they are? And I think if we got to hard numbers, we could probably better address this rather than just discussing the idea of it. So do we, Deputy City Manager, do we know that? Has that been discussed? Do we know those details?
So obviously staff was not prepared for this conversation today.
My point exactly.
Yeah. If in order to answer any more specific questions, I feel strongly that the homeless services manager should be available to council, and if there's a time we can make him available, but I don't want to represent numbers or any of the data. I've provided as much of the process as I recall from conversations I've been in, but it's certainly possible that some of those facts need to be clarified. So I would recommend that you allow us to have staff be more available to answer those questions at the manager's discretion.
Yeah, Manager Page, are you all able to have an immediate meeting with Hart to get some more definitive information so you all can make an administrative decision on how to address this? I do not want council making a hard, actionable decision without definitive details, and it cannot be based on what someone just said. Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things, we're talking about information known and some, information unknown. When someone is seen with the tent, that tent could have come from a good citizen. It could have come from anywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to come from, a tent that, was purchased as a provision, like other things that the Hart team has purchased with their operating budget and handed out as they feel appropriate. So, the direction that we went and that we have jurisdiction over here is whether or not we will direct our staff to provide tents as part of the provisions that they're providing. At this moment, I don't know if they have tents. I don't know anything about the details around where the number of tents that they were helping certain people with. I don't have that. I don't have that here. So to say they can start it back at a particular time, it would not be good for us to try to do that here because we don't, I don't think we have enough information to do it.
Councilman McCall, I don't have any issue with your request. I just want staff to go ahead and do what they need to do. I don't even think it's a policy discussion. I think the policy is being worked on. The action itself, I don't see it being a big issue. Just if somebody needs a resource and we have it, and just go forward. But I think we are almost at a point of killing the mosquito with an axe at this point on this topic. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that this is, I appreciate the question. We know these numbers, so this is not new. At the joint city county meeting last week, coordinating entry shared the numbers. 51 families. This is the week of December 2, 2024. 51 families reported being unsheltered. 50 single adults reported being unsheltered. That's roughly the numbers. That's the numbers you're seeing as well. So we know the numbers. And I think the frustration is we've been having this conversation for several months now. And so we just have to we have to expedite this. If it's HSAC making a policy, we've got to expedite this process. It's simply, we can't keep saying we don't know the numbers because we know the numbers.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm not questioning that. I mean, for me, who came downstairs to Hart asking then? I mean, we have X amount of numbers. number of families who've requested, support of who self-identified as homeless. And then we have whoever came asking for a tent. I'm looking like there was something some things you just don't need to bring to the council. And I also believe staff can handle, like, we don't have to direct someone to do it if it's easy enough for them to just handle the situation. So it's two different capacities in which I'm talking about. We have the numbers that were presented and families in Durham that are self-identified as homeless, and then we had whoever asked for a tent. For me, it's not that big of a deal. Just give them a tent if we have a tent to give to them. But also at the same time, when we speak in policy, which turns into law, which turns into a practice. So I'm also trying to make sure that we are not duplicating services, and then we're losing accountability of the services that we already have in place because someone said something. And I want to make sure that we are actually working in definitive numbers, not broadly, but very specifically to this issue, and then also our broader reaction. So I'm going to get us moving along. I think staff has direction from us. Madam Manager, do you need any clarification of how to respond to the situation? Do you speak the heart and say, hey, look, how many people came? Do you give them a tent, don't give them a tent, whatever it is? But there's a lot of folks that are playing a part in this conversation. And the reason why I wanted this on the Joint City Council, although I wasn't here, the reason why I wanted this on the agenda last week at Joint City County is because I wanted to know also not only what the city is doing, but what the county is doing and all of the partners. Just always bring up the continuum of care network and the services that are provided, because we often talk in assumptions. And we're not going to do that. We're not going to just assume. So I want to make sure that we're dealing with definitive answers, definitive information, so that we can make accountable actions. So
To just clarify, the point that is of concern is around our staff and direction and making sure that that's not a harm in providing a service that they were hired to do, which is to respond in those crises. And so I just want to make sure that it's clear. It has nothing to do with policy numbers. That's just staff. And that should not be a policy where we are deeming them, negatively, like in a crisis, responding to the needs of someone who is unsheltered or unhoused. That's just my whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get us moving along. Staff, I'm going to ask that you all address the situation and let us know how you respond to it with urgency. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I understand that we would like to move, but I just want to make sure that there is clarity because I had the 2 points and I want to make sure that we're not meeting again. And I respectfully would like to take some time off over the holidays, and also our manager is taking some time off. And so I want to make sure that we have clear guidance from this, which is it sounds like everyone is on board with the heart workers handing out tents if they deem that to be a necessity for the time being. It sounded like almost everyone was in support of that. And I just want to make sure that that is clear, that they are going to be able to hand out. And I understand that we are looking for more information. I understand that we are working on a policy, but I want to make sure that it's clear that folks will not be penalized for handing out those if they deem it to be a necessary part of their function.
Yeah,
I have point of order.
Yeah, and real quick, I don't think that's the issue. I don't even know if one, handing out tents in scope or not in scope of work. I don't even know if they have the tents. Maybe they do. If they did, that's fine. So I want to make sure that we are not operationalizing it. That's why I don't think it's that big of a deal that they're doing that. And I think staff hears us. If you're looking for clarity, staff is the only ones that can answer that question. So, and yeah.
I also have a point of order. This is a work session. We don't issue fiats or directives at work sessions. We can agree to put something on the agenda for further consideration. That one. This also was brought up under the rubric of other matter, and other matter. It's a work session. We have to suspend the rules to even take votes at work sessions. So this is not, in my assessment, the appropriate forum to issue directives to staff. Moreover, there's 2 conversations going on here. There's a conversation about the numbers about unsheltered people in the city, but a 911 generated response from the HEART team is not part of our homeless strategy. These tents are being passed out by HEART situationally. So that we're conflating our strategy for addressing the unsheltered with the excellent work that our HEART team work. If the HEART team is not going to solve the homeless issue in Durham. So I don't want us to pretend that even if we lifted the ban, that how somehow is addressing those overall numbers. It's perchance the HEART team may encounter one of those numbers we documented, or they may encounter numbers that haven't even been documented. There might be a situational homelessness situation that they encounter. I also want to say, with respect to the staff, we meet a couple times a month. This staff deals with this stuff in real time every day, every week, and they're a committed group of professionals. And staff responds to requests from county and a friend at DPS all the time, every day. Oh, nuts and bolts, down in the weeds stuff that we don't even read about in our packets that we get. So I want to be careful that we honor the work. I believe the decision that was made by staff was done in good faith. They were talking to other professionals and other committed people in HSAC, and their decision was made within a professional bubble. So they're all professionals down there as well, and they were responding. I believe that the decision was made in good faith. Finally, I want to raise again, if y'all are really this concerned, we got real estate. Order the city to open up some of our buildings for 30 days, however long it is, and let folks sleep there after business hours. We can do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, which is my point. I think staff has received our direction. Madam Manager, do you have the preference of the council? Which I know your response is you're going to need to get more information. We're not in a position to definitively react on this right now. So the concern is heard. Staff, you've heard the concern. Address it the best way you all can, and let us know what the response is. We're not the managers. We're the council. And Councilmember Clerk, I want to make sure that your point is heard. That's why I wanted to make sure we discussed it for staff to hear. But I think that's as far as we can go on it today.
I guess, just if I can, one final point. So clearly we're the policymaking body. We don't execute the work here. I think to me, what seems to be a question here is is the policy to allow tents to be given out or not, right? That is a policy question. So I don't know if you want to suggest we put this on an agenda to have a decision on that, but that would seem like a perfect item for the council to discuss. And
Yeah,
we don't make
be
decisions and votes at work sessions, but it seems like a perfect policy question for this council to explore.
And that would be the appropriate avenue.
And I think that's what's so just kind of alarming is that when it's an emergency, we've in the past suspended the rules and voted in work session to move grants forward. We've suspended the rule in work session to move different items forward. But for this, there's no sense of urgency enough to say, we just need to be able to make a definitive answer, whether we suspend the rules and vote or not, because I understand this is work session. But the thing is, I think that if 5 of us or 4 of us understand that staff should not be penalized for passing out tents, that is the question. That is the main thing that I'm hearing from Councilmember Cook. There's no disagreement on whether the policy should be developed. I'm lost on why we're not moving forward on staff should not be penalized for handing out
You might be lost because there wasn't a request to take a vote. There was a request to lift just don't ban, and which I didn't even know there was a ban. And there's a request to the 2 things that Councilmember Cook spoke about. But anytime we suspended the rules to take action in the past, we had information. Councilmember Cook and I spoke about this, which she's spoken to some of you all as well. And I agreed that we would, bring it up so staff can make sure they heard our concern. But I think that we've evolved into the expectation of taking some formal action without information being available. And I think that's irresponsible. So the concern has been heard. We've discussed it way longer than I thought we were going to. But it is important. But I don't think the expectation was us for us to suspend the rules and take action on something that information is not even present for. We know how many people, yes, broadly, but that's why I was asking the question, like, what, with heart, how many people came up, how many people gave attention? That's fine. You know what, the number doesn't even matter. I think staff has heard the preference of the council, and now we need to trust staff to move forward. There is no formal action for us to take. And I think if we start getting in the practice of suspending the rules to take action on something that hasn't been defined, I honestly don't even know what a motion would be at this point. I think that this request has been heard. We've pretty much all agreed that staff please take action urgently with the situation around, people being unsheltered. That means that there is a network that we've already established. That is policy, that is practice that we need to activate. That includes HSAC, that includes the county, community development, the city, HART, police, and whoever else. So there's nothing to suspend the rules and take action on.
I want to be very clear. I did not make a motion. I was asking for this body to give guidance to the manager's office that we would like that ban lifted. I also do not want to put this on the agenda because I know that it's in the works. I'm not trying to write that encampment policy because I know that it is already being worked on. So that was my ask, was that we give guidance to the manager's office that that ban be lifted until we get that policy in effect. And it sounds like that is the guidance that has been given. I'm just confirming that that is how everyone else has interpreted that.
What point of clarification, my point of order? The members of the HART team are not using their own resources to secure tents. They are being issued equipment. So in effect, to say that we're lifting a ban would further imply that we are ordering staff to provide them with those resources. The member of a HART team wanted to go out and buy a tent and keep it in there and give it on their own. Yeah, I don't think they'd be dinged. I mean, they're members of the community, but this is not just saying you can't use a tool in your tool belt. We give them the tools. So, and I, this first off, and to my other point of order, this is a work session. No one's offered a motion to suspend the rules, and to Councilmember Freeman's point, she's right, we do suspend the rules almost exclusively when the staff ask us. So if we respect the staff then, I think we should respect their decision now. It was not made in a vacuum. It was made in consultation with other professionals. There's a policy coming forward from HSAC. And I'll say here from the dais, if a member of our HART team has a tent and they give somebody a tent, they should not be dinged. That is a different matter from the city of Durham issuing them tents to give out. So we need to be clear about that as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We should move on.
Good.
So I'll just say a few final words. I think that the relationships and the partnerships that we have in the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, the members of the HART team had believed that having tents as part of their provisions was something that would help the community. And therefore, when they purchase supplies and those kinds of things, they had the tents. The reason that the pause was made was a recommendation from the folks that work in that community that there should be more policy around the distribution of tents. So we accepted that recommendation because it came from the people who actually serve the community that we're talking about here. It wasn't a punitive thing that we were trying to do. We were not upset with our employees. Our employees were actually wanting to be and do the things that the regular Homeless Services Advisory Committee believes is beneficial to that community. So that's why they are not doing it. What I don't know here today, and I don't know if Deputy Manager Ferguson knows, whether they even have tents. I don't even know. I didn't see.
Okay.
But I don't want it to be unclear as to what our employees, I mean, these are employees that work for us, what they should be doing when they go out to do their job.
Good afternoon, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Madam Manager. Ryan Smith, Director of the Community Safety Department. The Community Safety Department does have a small supply of tents remaining that we have not issued. I do not know off the top of my head what that inventory is, but we had purchased some that we left in our inventory. So we do have a small supply. I could find out the exact number. I do not know it standing here.
I think it's been made very clear. No one is going to get fired for giving out a tent. You all have resources. You've been empowered to do that. And I think, staff has made that clear as well. So I don't know what more we are expecting to do today. I think we're ready to move on. Thank you. Could you turn that mic off for me? But don't go too far because we are now on item number 3. And Councilmember Caballero left. She writes down my numbers. Did you get them? Okay, all right. And I just assumed that Councilmember Cook pulls everything, so I don't know who pulled it. Who pulled it? Councilmember Baker.
Good afternoon, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, council members, Madam Manager. Jermaine Brewington, Director of the Audit Services Department.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I think I want to hear maybe from you and then Director Smith. But can you just provide a little bit of an overview and expand a little bit upon the audit report, the findings and recommendations, and then I would like to hear from Director Smith some of the department responses to the audit recommendations.
So in the audit report, let me just go back for a second to the objective if I can. The objective of the audit was for us to determine if the program has practices in place to effectively receive and respond to incidents involving nonviolent mental health crises or quality of life concerns. And so we looked at their practices. We ultimately came up with a couple of findings. And so one of the things that we noted was that, and I want to say at the outset, the program is awesome. The program has only been in place for a couple of years. And so I think they've done a wonderful job. But we did determine that targets established by the department for fiscal year 25 appeared to us to be a little bit ambitious. And the reason we said that was because the target for fiscal year 25 was around 52%. The actual for fiscal year 24 was around 25%. And again, when we're doing projections, we do those projections like a year out. And based on the activity that Director Smith and his team were aware of, that was the metric that they came up with, right? 52%. And so we just said, using the other metrics from the Kennedy School of Government, they're going to do some more research, but we just said, just do some more research to make sure that what you're telling the public, what they're telling you guys, what they're telling the manager is in fact reasonable. So that was finding 1, and I'll let Ryan talk about their response to that, but they were in agreement with that response. For finding 2, and I think this is the last finding, actually, I think there were only 2 findings, but we also noted that in their clinical management system, their departmental policy is that they record these encounters, information on these encounters within 24 hours. And we noted when we pulled the sample that some of the responses were much longer than that. And so these guys are awesome at doing data analysis. They are probably some of the best at the city, right? And what we were just saying is, if you're not collecting this data and recording this data on a timely basis, then your analysis can't be as accurate as you want it to be. And again, they agreed with that. So those were the things that we were looking at. We're just trying to make sure that, what they were doing was in fact what they intended to do.
Great, thank you. And if I can just hear from Director Smith, thank you for that overview. Director Smith, sounds like the official audit report comes back with awesome. And can you just provide a little bit of response
Sure.
And maybe a little bit of just an overview of the audit and then just a little bit of an outlook of the program?
Sure. Thank you. Ryan Smith, Director of Community Safety. I think the big picture from the audit is a positive report. I'll speak briefly to the two findings and provide a little bit more context. On the first one, which is really about our degree to accurately forecast how many calls we can get to with our staff, an update on that sitting here today. So as the audit noted, we had projected about 52% of calls. On 3 of our 4 programs, we're actually very good. So sitting here today, we get to about 53.5% of our community response team calls, 75% of our crisis call diversion calls. The big thing that we're working on is co-response, where we get to about 12% of calls. And the audit lays out a multitude of reasons that we're working on and just talked to Chief Andrews about that today on strategies we have for how we can increase the number of calls that we're getting to. But I think we have also over the summer, and Anise Vance is our amazing assistant director, has been doing a lot of work on creating an even more sophisticated staffing model so that we understand how we need to staff units to make sure that our forecasting is as accurate as can be. But I think overall, on 3 of our 4 programs, our forecasting has been very good, and in co-response, for reasons that we're learning about as we're growing as a department, we're going to get better at that, and some of that is operational things that we're working out with the Durham Police Department. On the audit found 128 service records that were not in compliance with the standards that we set for ourselves on how quickly we want to close things out. The context I want to put around that is that represents 1.1% of our service records. So it's important to us. Our goal is to do that. We have it as an internal best practice because we want to do it across the board. And I'm grateful for audit department's review and servicing things that we can focus on. But to put in context, on 98.9% of the time, we were closing out our service records within our goal. And we put in place some really good, under the leadership of Lee Mazer and Abena Bediako, our clinical managers, some really good internal practices so that we are tracking that on a weekly basis with our shift supervisors and making sure that we're getting those cases and documentation closed out for all the reasons that the audit staff recognize as important. So those are my responses that I feel as the director of the department in charge of I feel good about where we're at and our ability to respond in the manner that we have laid out in the audit, and happy to answer more questions about that. Higher level, I'd like to say a couple things, and part of this is we're in the theme of giving Manager Page her flowers, and I'd like to take just a moment to do that too. It has been the privilege of my life to lead the department that you created, and I will forever be indebted to you for the opportunity to do that and for your bold leadership that created this department. I've said that to you before, but I want to say it to you on this day too. We are part of a national movement. I'm very aware of what this work looks like across the country. And as a point of pride for you, Madam Manager, I hope that you take pride in knowing that the department that you created is, and I do not say this of pride with me, it's for the amazing people that do this work, but you created the conditions for us to have, as a real matter of fact, one of the best programs in the country. And that's not me saying it, it is all the folks who come here all the time from across the country, across our state, for the various groups that are putting us in small groups with other agencies to lead the development of national best practices. And I've learned a lot about leadership just from a distance away from watching you. And one of the things that I appreciate about you is being a good leader is about creating the right conditions for something to succeed. And I think you did a couple of things that are pretty rare in this country that were bold decisions in my humble view. One of them was creating a standalone department. I think that has benefited us in a lot of ways, and it's not the common practice. And the other thing was supporting a recommendation that we be able to hire and develop the capacity within, as opposed to what is a common practice of outsourcing it to other providers. And there's good reasons for those things, but I do think those decisions that you made, along with your steady support and all the ways that you ask all the tough questions and help us be our best, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I hope that you see this. To me, this will always be a part of your legacy. And I love what I do. And the people in my department really love it too. And we are grateful for the opportunity you created for us to do this work that we find joy and purpose in. So thank you, Madam Manager. Sorry. Other questions?
Yeah, if I can thank you very much. Yeah. If I can just add to this also, thank you to the Audit Services Department, Dr. Brewington, and your staff for a great report. Thank you, Director Smith, for coming to talk about the work you're doing. I just want to lift up again that, as I think Dr. Brewington said, this is among the most rigorous departments in the city, very data-driven in terms of your work, in terms of your outcomes and objectives. So I really want to lift that up and appreciate that. Also want to say publicly, and also maybe let you say more about this, there's also other evaluations you're also involved in. So if you would sort of maybe say a little bit more about those much deeper analyses of your work. And I would also invite you to bring, when those reports are complete, love for you to bring those before the council so we can learn more about the incredible work and the kind of depth of analysis that you're doing about the work of HEART. So
thank you, Councilmember Riss. Yes, we have, from the beginning, we've been really committed to both transparency and rigorous evaluation. And part of that is, of course, for ourselves and for the residents that we serve and knowing what's working and what's not. Part of that also is to inform what is still a new field. And as one of the departments that is helping lead the way, we want to be a place that can have a lot of rigorous evaluation about our program that we can share with others. So we have two, as you may recall. None of these are funded by the city. There's so much interest in this work. So Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funds one that the Cook Center for Social Equity at Duke is leading. That is doing a lot of surveying, both of in communities where we are operating, so understanding residents' experience with our work, and also of other partners. So they've been doing surveys with law enforcement and others about this experience. That's a multi-year grant, but we will begin to get some deliverables, and we look forward to sharing that both with you and publicly. The second evaluation is one that RTI is leading, funded by Arnold Ventures. It's also a multi-year evaluation. It's more, I would say, like quantitative, looking at outcomes. They have done a number of, there have been a number of early deliverables on that. One of them was they did a survey of, I don't remember the number, but a couple of hundred law enforcement officers in the Durham Police Department about their perspectives on our work before we launched and what they are today. We can share that with council. I think the high level what that shows is what Chief Andrews and I both experienced, which is growing support among law enforcement as they have seen this work in practice and seen the benefit of it. Was still room to grow, but a lot of good progress there. So there are a lot of ways that we're going to be learning about this work, and our commitment to transparency around this, we'll be making that. Happy to come back and report to council, and also be making that publicly available to others. Thank you.
great, thank you so much.
I just have one final question. I'm just curious, and this is a very, not a very specific like number related question, but to what extent do you feel over the past, since the beginning of community safety departments, beginning of HEART, and it's very new, a great way to evaluate a program is to look at what other programs are doing. And there aren't that many else to look at because Durham is an innovator in this area. To what extent do you feel that HEART is replacing some services that already existed before with more appropriate skill sets? So before, for example, if a police officer were responding to someone who was having a mental health crisis, now we're sending someone who's experienced in that field, and a police officer might not, in some cases, might not have to show up. Versus to what extent do you think we are using resources to supplement and essentially create a new service that never existed before, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd think a little bit about the second part of it. I mean, I think that our first 2.5 years demonstrate in ways that I'd be happy to come back and talk about in more detail, that HEART is adding to our public safety response in ways that enables us to better match the needs of some neighbors in crisis than we were able to do before. We bring a whole different set of skill sets than law enforcement. I think that frees up law enforcement to be places where we need them most, and more places where even law enforcement, as the survey and other things will show, increasingly find value in having HEART available. It's also demonstrated in the increasing number of times we're being requested by law enforcement to join them on scene for certain calls. I think there are lots of ways we can look at it that show that, yes, something like HEART better positions us to respond to the needs of our neighbors who experience a very broad range of crises, and that is to speak nothing of against the important work that other public safety agencies are doing. We've just diversified the kind of responses that we have, and that enables us to better match the needs. So I think there's a lot of evidence of that, and that evidence is things that both we can come back and report on, and is evident both. I would lift up, if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, there was a really great podcast series that Trade-Offs did. And the reason I lift it up is because, yes, I'm here saying it, and but you can hear our own police chief say these things. It's a 4-part series. It's some of the best journalism on this in the country that has happened. And you will hear our police chief, who I think the world of, speak about her own perspective on this work, the value she has seen of it, and also transparently about some of the challenges of it. So there's a lot of ways that you can yourself listen, come through ride-alongs, and I'm happy to come back and report. On the other, it's a good one, and honestly, I would need to think a little bit more about how I want to respond to that. And I'm just not quick enough on my feet to answer that second question.
Thank you. And I was going to ask you to reference the podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it diffuses some of the binary that folks have put out there of it has to be this or that. And I think that Durham is leading the way on how, I don't even want to say coexist, but more so collaborate and expand our public safety apparatus. We're not there yet. I think we're headed in the right direction. I think that there's still some implicit bias around certain parts of our public safety apparatus. But I think that, just the way we really collaborated, from community safety to public safety with police and heart, man, we are making serious strides, and I just appreciate your leadership. So I would ask that you repeat the podcast name.
Sure. You can, on any streaming service, if you look up Trade-Offs, the fifth branch is the name of the particular series. Trade-Offs is former NPR journalists. They do in-depth reporting on health policy issues. But Trade-Offs, fifth branch, you'll find it three-part episode, that gives a lot of insight into the program.
And I'll say, I know you referenced the police chief speaking on there with you, but what was most compelling is actually, actual, officers that are on patrol that were non-believers that came around on this, and that podcast I've provided to quite a few folks, and specifically to those who took serious issue with like ShotSpotter or something. Like, guys, it does not have to be either or. We can expand the tools in our toolbox to best serve all of our community. And so I think this is in the right direction. I'm really grateful for that podcast. Thanks for providing it for me to listen. Any other questions, colleagues? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to associate myself with everything my colleagues have said. Ryan, good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
Doing great work there. Congratulations on a great audit. In the future, when you introduce yourself to us, would you please tell us your bird name? Just
Yes,
make
sir.
that part of your...
If that's a request, my bird name's Chickadee. Also, Madam Manager, would you introduce yourself?
My bird name is Harpy Eagle.
Harpy Eagle, in case you couldn't hear that. So
I put in a request for pterodactyl. Still haven't heard anything yet. But I do want to again thank you, and I'm glad that you pointed out the innovative work of our manager, because it wasn't always that way. I mean, this rose has some thorns on it. At the beginning, one of the animating propositions behind this type of work for some folk was to replace the police. There were talks in Durham before we all were celebrating, talks in Durham of a one-to-one replacement. Every time we hire a heart person, get rid of a cop. And our manager pushed back against that and said, no, we can have a coexistence. And you talked about your legendary relationship now with the chief. So I want to thank y'all for doing that work, even when it was hard. And Durham is now heralded as an example around the country of what it looks like to coexist. I want to celebrate the statistic that we can never measure, however. Because, for some folk, the proposition why we need a heart was the police are murdering mentally distressed people. And for a large part of people, the proposition was the less police contact, the greater the likelihood of survival. That's what folk were talking about. I do not know, and we can never document how many people that the heart team have encountered would have been killed by the police. We can't measure that. The headline has been stopped, but thank God we have that tool in our toolbox. And that's what it's really about, having a wide array of responses, the appropriate responses to appropriate situations. Of all the data we collect, listen, if folk said we didn't like heart, I just think it's a good idea. Some things you need to have in your toolbox to prevent things from happening. And the things that you prevent will never make the headline. There are folk in this city and in this community, and you're one of them, that are stopping headlines from happening, that are stopping young men and women from turning to a life of crime and gangs. We'll never know their names, and we can't measure that. And what I love about HART is that the headlines that it stops, which we'll never be able to measure. So it will always have my vote. I don't care what the data says, because the main data point is a data point that is immeasurable. And that's the number of lives that have been preserved because HART went instead of a hopped up police officer, which is not the Durham Police Department, but policing writ large in our country. So thank you. Congratulations on the great audit. Looking forward to more work. Looking forward to hear about my bird name. Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Mayor.
So noted.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is item number 4.
That one is me. Hi. How are you? I just was hoping that you would give us a really, really brief summary, and then I'd love to hear from Deputy City Manager Chadwell or whoever staff. Oh, hi. Okay, just kidding. Whoever is going to speak on behalf of the staff. I just have a couple questions about the responses. If you'll just.
Sorry, thank you. Director Smith turned it off. Thank you very much. The objective of this audit was to review efforts of the city to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act Title II requirements. Title II specifically pertains to local governments. So we were not looking in this audit to see whether or not the city was in compliance, because we are, but we were looking specifically at Title II and whether or not the transition plan and the self-evaluation, if we were complying with those documents. So if I look at, we had several recommendations. And before I finish, I just want to say, I want to go back to the HART audit because there's something I want to say, but I will continue with this right now. So with finding 1, there's a lack of clear direction from upper management on responsibilities of the ADA coordinator and ownership of the ADA function. So when we started this audit, one of the things that came to light was that we were not really clear. The director of the Equity and Insurance Department, which is where this process is housed right now, none of us were really clear about it, what the role was and whether or not the role should be in the particular department that where it resided, right? That was one of the things. And so with regard to that particular recommendation, we looked at the ADA coordinator. The ADA coordinator is a requirement of the transition plan and our self-evaluation. And so that role is currently not in place. And that was one of the things that we wanted to highlight. It's also a requirement of the transition plan that position be outward facing, that residents know who that person is, who they can contact, and where that position resides. So that kind of thing was really not in place at the time of this audit. That was recommendation number 1. With regard to finding number 2, management has not determined which department is permanently accountable for assuming the responsibility. So that's in the same vein, in that this particular role was in the General Services Department. It transitioned to the Equity and Inclusion Department a couple of years ago. The director agreed to take this function, this process, but didn't really realize at the time that it was going to be a permanent kind of residency. And so we addressed that. Finding 3, current practices are not aligned with those identified in the transition plan. The transition plan and the self-evaluation. The self-evaluation is just that, right? And so we look at the city, how we are complying. And then if we see deficiencies, then we take action, staff takes action to correct those deficiencies. In the various departments around the city, we have practices in place in our daily operations that deal with ADA compliance. So there are several departments that have practices in place. But with regard to the transition plan itself, we said we were going to do certain things. And if in fact we were complying with those things, it would be great, but we're not, right? And so we told staff they needed to address that. And I think those are the 3 findings.
Thank you.
So your question.
Yes, it's going to be a staff question. So whoever wants to address it.
Good afternoon, Sharon Williams, Department of Equity and Inclusion Director.
Hi, Ms. Williams. How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing well. So I was particularly interested in this. It's something that I've been trying to sort of look at just as my role of sit on the mayor's committee for persons with disabilities, and this has been brought up. I do think that there has been a little bit of issue, sort of. It just got addressed, but sort of this lack of outward facing and some issues with finding who is responsible and ensuring that these we were in compliance with the transition plan. So I'm just looking at the responses now for the findings, and I see that pretty much every response is we agree. And I'm on page 20, so I'm on the more detailed responses. They all have different dates, and I'm wondering sort of how we came up with those dates of implementation, and perhaps for some of them where the dates are extremely close, which includes the one to recommendation 4 is January 1. Oh, I'm sorry, that's 2026. That is quite far out. Never mind. So that is gonna change my misread. I apologize. But we do have some plans for, it looks like, fall of 2025, and I was just wondering for those ones, and summer of 2025, what sort of movements are happening and what we can be looking out for coming from your office.
So thank you for those questions. Some things were an easy lift, so it was easier to put dates in that were sooner. Others were a much more difficult lift, and so that's where the dates came from. There are multiple departments that are collaborating on this, so it's equity and inclusion, neighborhood improvement services, and general services. We're coordinating an enterprise-wide response. So the things that were an easy lift were things that we could do that were talked about, like making sure that our residents know who the coordinator is right now. Who do you contact if you have an issue and you want to reach somebody? That was an easy lift. We did that. Making sure that we updated the portal where residents can request information with ways that we will assist them if they have a disability and they need some help. So some things were an easy lift, and we've been able to do those things. So we had a date that was a lot sooner. Other things are going to take a little bit more time and more coordination. And so I was instrumental in writing that response.
Okay, thank you. And I do think that some of that answered itself, because I thought y'all were responding to the 4th recommendation by January, and I was really confused on how we were going to get that done. So that makes way more sense that it is January of 2026. I just want to say that I appreciate this audit, and I appreciate the work that y'all are doing to address it. I do think that where the city is always striving, of course, to meet not only our ADA compliance, but also this Title II, our transition plans. All of these different things, we're of course striving to meet them, but what we know from residents is that sometimes we are falling short on those things. We do have folks who have differing abilities, particularly folks who are vision impaired, who do have a lot of trouble accessing information on our city websites or elsewhere. And so I just want to appreciate the work that's going into that, and I am looking forward to more clarity on who's responsible and where best department that this can sit in. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up as well. Appreciate Councilmember Cook's questions, and I would concur that it's going to be a heavy lift, and you definitely have our support. I do want to say, I want to know if that office downstairs is still open and available for folks.
It is.
Sharing that information that is around, I guess, where the ADA coordinator was, and if you could share who the ADA coordinator is currently.
Okay. So the office that she's referring to is an office that exists in City Hall for the Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities. They have the ability to have access to that office. It has equipment in there that is specifically for persons that have disabilities, so anyone could utilize that office. They haven't utilized it as much since COVID, but it does still exist, and they are able to access it whenever. Currently, the responsibility for the administrative coordinator role lives in equity and inclusion. right?
So there's
And
no specific person.
so I have a new person that's my administrative coordinator.
Okay.
She is only 3 weeks in, but she understands the responsibility and the things that she has to do. And she is the person that's providing project management for all of the things that we've set in place in response to this audit. So we are the source that will take a resident's complaint or an issue, right? We're the source. This is where it lands. And then our job is to source it, to find out the departments where it needs to live, and then to follow up to make sure that action was taken on behalf of the resident.
Thank you. And I do want to say that I think the space that is made available is filled with information as well. There's a lot of information on Social Security, the benefits around folks with differing abilities, and then also as a resource, making sure that there's like anything that you want to ask or any time that you want to make information available to people with different abilities, that office was the space where that information was collected. I know Ms. Marge and a number of others from the Mayor's Committee for Disabilities often try to get folks to come in, and they used to host an annual event in which they would make sure that that information went out into the community. I don't know if that still happens, but it would be great to get that going again. I know with COVID, a lot of this shut down, but
Yeah, they very much want to get that going again.
yeah, thank you. And that was all.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to thank Audit Services for conducting the audit. I know we had the chance to see this preview it in the previous meeting. I just want to follow up with staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Rist.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to appreciate the conversation about our ADA compliance and the work that management's doing to even tighten up the work we're doing. I also, since Councilmember Cook asked about the recommendations, management response, and timeline, I just want to put in a plug for the Audit Services Committee. So as you know, Audit Services come to us maybe like once a month with a new report, right? Each one having recommendations, often with responses and timelines. And so just so you know, Councilmember Cook, Audit Services does actually have a spreadsheet we track about all these recommendations and when action is being taken to close those out. So we actually track those once the report has been given. So we do have some oversight over how we are doing in actually like meeting our objectives or meeting our commitments in responding to the audit. So again, thank you for that work, Dr. Brewington, and the ongoing oversight of all of our processes and services at the City of Durham. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to follow up one thing on the heart item?
I do.
Okay.
Point of privilege, please. And so one of the things I wanted to point out, residents may not have read this report. The community response team responded to 83% of the calls that they received, the calls that they received. That was about 5,000 calls that they addressed without law enforcement. So if you're trying to think about how effective is the department being, I think that's a really important statistic. And that was for 23 and 24. And then another statistic was for the crisis call diversion unit, 50%. So that's about 500 calls were managed by the folks that sit in 911 without needing any in-person contact. So again, those are just some statistics. The other thing I want, and you guys may not know this because you probably don't know how we work, but we have entrance conferences, we have exit conferences. And during that exit conference, the department, so Director Ryan, will push back on what we're trying to, the findings and the recommendations, and it's my job to also push back. And one of the things that Director Smith stated was that while in finding 2, it was 128 cases, which he said was 1% of their total cases for the reporting or recording of those items, those encounters on a timely basis. And he did ask if we would put that context in the report, and I said no, I was not going to do that. And the reason for that was we did not have time to look at all the cases that had been closed. So saying that only 1% of the cases that were closed were outside of their policy timeframe was not something that we could say. We could not verify that. So I just want you guys to understand the department pushes back, we push back, but we're only going to put something in a report that we can actually verify. So any other questions?
Thank you so much. All right, and item number 5, who pulled that? All right, but
Well, I think actually everyone pulled it.
okay, well, I do have a speaker in person Gosh, I don't have my glasses. Can you read that? Oh, Quincy Holcutt.
He just, yeah,
Hey there. Hey there, welcome. Yeah, we are actually on item number 5, which is the bow hunting. If you, I did have that you pulled this. Would you like to share remarks? Well, welcome. You have 3 minutes. Up to 3 minutes. You don't have to take the whole thing if you don't want.
No, we'll take less than that. Actually, we don't have a prepared speech. We saw this item on the agenda. We thought that maybe some of the council members had concerns or questions. So we thought we would just actually show up and we can address any concerns or questions you might have based upon, what the Trayburn Board of Directors feels. So if you have questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them. There is one comment I'll make before I sit down. We understand that perhaps some of the vocal critics within our own community seem to have an idea that our idea is to wander around Trayburn with a group of people that have bows and arrows, and we can shoot at anything that moves. That is the farthest from any idea that we would ever have. The idea is to try to reduce our deer population, but to do so extremely safely. And the plans that we would have going forward, provided you change the ordinance, is that we would have nothing like what I just described. This would be very controlled, very carefully vetted people, held on extremely limited properties that are privately held, and they have permission given to us to do the culling. But we can't proceed with any of those plans unless the city of Durham changes the ordinance as it currently exists. So with that, I'll hush up. If you have questions, fire away.
Thank you so much. All right, Councilmember Cook.
Thank you. Just wanted to pull up.
You're good, Mr. Cook. Several council members pulled it as well, so we're just going to discuss it, and you're welcome to listen in on it.
So last time, colleagues, I had raised some concerns that I think were echoed by a few others. I just want to recognize the work that Deputy City Manager Bo Ferguson put into responding to my particular concerns. And that was put out on December 2nd at the meeting in the manager's priority items. The things that I had raised were requesting specifically if we could put extra safety mechanisms around a bow hunting ordinance, specifically in terms of notice and time. The reason I brought those up again, and I'm still feeling really uncomfortable about them, are because we aren't talking about a restricted space where you know that there is hunting that occurs and you just choose not, for example, to go walk in Duke Forest during hunting season. We're talking about people's yards, people's neighbors. And I wanted to make sure that if we could further restrict those items, that we would look into that option. Unfortunately, we, through some assessment, I believe, with the city attorney's office, each of the things that I had asked for, it sounds like we cannot add those extra precautions. And for me, this feels too broad still. And I do recognize that it's really important to regulate wildlife and that there's not a lot of options for these specific neighbors. And I recognize that in addition to just like the actual just property damage that they can inflict, there's also real danger to people's health, right? We know that there's a rise in tick-borne illnesses and that high deer populations lead to that. And then also vehicular accidents and that sort of thing. But for me, I'm having trouble mentally getting past the idea that there's a possibility that right on folks' boundary lines, there could be active hunting that's silent, because bow hunting does not make noise. And I know that it will come from a specific position, but it doesn't limit the fact that it will still be ongoing. People have young children, they have pets, they live in those neighborhoods. it's not just Trayburn, it's going to be applicable to the entire city. And though we have sort of not a lot of statistics in terms of the regulations in other places, we do know that none of the other large cities in North Carolina allow bow hunting. For me, I don't feel like there are enough restrictions on this to make me feel okay with its broad application. At the very least, I would be asked that it gets put on GBA moving forward. Thank you.
I'm going to let other colleagues speak. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, colleagues. Bo, you going to address from over there, or are you gonna... Pardon me, Mr. Manager Designate.
I'm sorry. Bo Ferguson, Deputy City Manager for Public Safety, and I was having a sidebar conversation on, so if there was a question I missed it, I apologize.
No, not at all. I'm just beginning, actually. So the HOA letter in our memo from Trayburn asked for a reduction in the buffer around dwellings for the release of arrows from 250 feet to 60 feet. But under issues and analysis, no, okay, it was referring to the 2013. The 2013 proposal established no buffers, or I thought that was a 250. Go ahead.
There was a committee that made a recommendation to council in 2013. Their original recommendation had no buffers. Council expressed concern about that and asked for staff to consider a safety buffer. And so the ordinance was brought back at council's request to have the safety buffer in place.
And they're asking us to go from 5 acres to 2 acres, but in 2013 they went from 2 to 5. And I don't even want you to pretend that you remember it intimately, but what was the motivation from going from 2 to 5 back then?
So I don't remember at all, but the documentation I have read indicates that it was similar to the buffer, that there was a concern about safety. As the agenda memo plays out, we have attempted to verify through reports across the state concerns. We just have not found data on either side of the argument to suggest where that number should or should not be. And so the lack of our ability to give council a firm recommendation on what is safe and what is not safe is simply because this is so rare of, it has been used so rarely, and other cities report so little interaction with it that we just really have no information to go on.
And this ordinance, this amended ordinance would be I mean, it would be relevant to all of Durham, not just Trayburn.
Correct.
It would have universal. I'm a bit sensitive lately about things starting locally and having universal impact. I've been hurt before. Let me and this is a real question. I'm not a hunter. Instead of killing all the deer, are there any kind of like root cause initiatives we can engage in? Maybe things around fertility or stuff like that, rather than killing all of them? Are there other things we can do?
So the best I can answer that is to say that in 2013, that appears to have been a fairly robust part of the conversation. Is that that there was discussion in 2013 amongst North Carolina Wildlife Resources and various advocacy groups who had opinions on the matter, and the committee's recommendation to the council was that there has been no scientifically proven method other than the culling of deer to address the overpopulation. I think some communities have experimented with sterilization, relocation, and none of those efforts. Again, I am not a professional and don't want to speak to one, but that is what I read from the 2013 minutes and discussion from that time.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see some of that. I mean, I know it's the quickest, most efficient way, the culling, but this is a root cause kind of city. So obviously I've got to ask the question about alternatives to just killing things. This is Durham, right? I do share some of I share Councilmember Cook's concerns also about safety issues with this, particularly lowering the buffer from 250 to 60 feet. That seems pretty close to me, to structures. But I'll defer and wait to hear from the rest of my colleagues. But I do want to echo Councilmember Cook's concerns with this as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just want to go on the record that Councilmember Cook and Mayor Pro Tem are on the same page about something. I'm gonna yield to my colleagues. Manager Page and I grew up in Wilson and Halifax County, Nash County. So for us, you just, there's a season and a license and you go for it. So I'm gonna rely on my colleagues for this one. And in my own natural bias, I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? But that's me. So I get it. Go ahead, Councilmember Rist.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just want to thank my council colleagues for agreeing to put this on our agenda for I'm assuming this is on GBA next meeting. Yeah.
It will be now, yeah.
Yeah. As you've heard me say the last month or so, I think part of what I'm pledging to the citizens of Durham is to provide better and quicker government. So I want to provide a timely, definitive answer to the residents who brought this issue forward. So I appreciate you all putting this on the agenda so we can give that kind of answer. I do share some of the concerns of my colleagues, partly because there's no data, as Deputy City Manager Ferguson said, there's no data. Other big cities in the state don't have deer hunting. So we don't know where to set that limit. There's just a lot of unclarity. So I do have some of the same concerns. Look forward to the debate on I guess the second or the third when this is on GBA and go from there.
Yeah, January.
But again, appreciate that we're having a discussion about it.
All of y'all city folks, what else? What you got? What you got, Jersey?
I do want to bow and arrows, right? I wish that were a problem. I want to echo and associate myself with Councilmember Rist sentiments about wanting to provide effective response to folk. I want to be just as responsive to the folk in McDougal Terrace as we are to Trayburn as well, and communities that are under gunfire every night, not deer, not bows and arrows, but bullets. They've asked for things as well in the past, and I think I hear you, but I just want to make sure we do that for all communities equally. So with that said, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I believe that's all the commentary we have for item number 5. And just, Madam Clerk, just want to make sure we, Ms. Smallwood, Paris Smallwood is not online. Oh, all right. All right. So those are all the items. Right? Cool. Right, those are all the items that I have pulled. Had your wrist already. All right. All right. Those are items. Those are the items. Madam Clerk, do we need to refer to you for any reporting out?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you all so much. It is officially 3:31 p.m. And I'm going to pass it over to Madam Manager to set the agenda here for the very last time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council. I have for you and your new manager for consent, items 1 through 4 and items 6 through 10, and on GBA, item 5. Thank you very much, and I'm out.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to settle. No,
Move to settle. Set the agenda.
it has been moved and settled. It has been moved and seconded by the council for the agenda to be settled as read. And all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Madam Manager, please gavel us out. See y'all at 5 p.m. 37 years.